This lesson covers Hyper-V integration services. Now, I talked previously about operating systems being enlightened, i.e. aware that they're actually running in a hypervisor. To get the maximum functionality, there are often special drivers needed for the guest operating system so they can fully take advantage of all the capabilities. These are known as integration services. If I'm running Windows 8 or Windows Server 2012 on Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V, they already have the integration services built in. There's no separate installation required. But if I'm running other operating systems such as Windows Server 2008 R2, 2008, 2003 R2, Windows XP, and even Linux operating systems such as CentOS, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, SUSE, although some of the newest Linux distributions actually also have the Hyper-V integration services built in, I actually need to go ahead and install those integration services into the virtual machine. This is actually a very simple process. So if I, for example, select a 2008 machine, I can do Action, Insert Integration Services Setup Disk. All this actually does is now map an ISO file into the DVD drive of that virtual machine. So I don't have to use this. I could take this ISO, extract the files and put them on a share somewhere. It then runs a setup routine and would then install these integration services for this. Now for Linux, you're actually going to want to go and download the latest version of the Linux integration services to get the full capabilities. What these actually do are expose a number of not only drivers enabling it to take advantage of synthetic SCSI, synthetic network adapters, and so on, but there are also a separate number of integration services that I can enable or disable. For example, one of them is operating system shutdown. From Hyper-V, I can shut down the OS in a clean fashion, actually send it the signal to say shut down. It will perform time synchronization, setting the time on those virtual machines to match the host operating system. Data exchange actually allows some interesting data to be exchanged between the virtual machine and the Hyper-V host through registry values. This enables, for example, the virtual machine to find out what host it's running on. It enables the host to find out, for example, the IP addresses, the name of the virtual machine's guest operating system, and you can create these custom values as well. Heartbeat helps check is the VM responding and performing, and backup is a critical service. When we back up at the Hyper-V host, we're probably going to use a volume shadow copy service, a VSS backup software solution. Well, I want my virtual machines to be aware that that backup is happening, so they also flush all their data out to disk and make sure it's in a consistent state. With this service enabled, when I do a VSS backup on the Hyper-V host, the integration services actually go through and notify the guest operating systems that a backup is being taken. They can then call all the VSS writers within the guest operating system to ensure a clean backup. This enables me to take a backup of the Hyper-V host of the VHD files and know they're in an application consistent state. When you are running virtual machines on Hyper-V, it's very important you do leverage these integration services and make sure you're running the latest versions to ensure the best performance, as there can be some performance improvements through drivers that are added as part of these integration services. I should point out that pretty much all of the roles and features of Windows Server 2012 are supported when Windows Server 2012 is running in a virtual machine. The only caveat to this is something like Remote Desktop Session Host, where I have many users connecting. And in this case, it's still fully supported and works, but you want to make sure your processor supports that secondary level address translation. Remember that mapping of physical pages to the virtual machine memory pages. This gives a performance improvements that's very noticeable for user type applications. Also, many server applications are also now supported when running on a hypervisor, but you should actually check with your vendor of the software if they do indeed support being virtualized and do they support being virtualized on Hyper-V. But in most circumstances, the application really has no way of knowing it's virtualized at all, but you do want to make sure you're fully supported by your application vendors. This concludes the lesson on Hyper-V integration services.